Hi, everyone. I'm Shannon.
I'm Alexis.
And we are welcoming you back for another episode of Get Stiff.
Get Stiff is a podcast where we have conversations around grief, loss, and everything in between over cocktails. Each episode coincides with a themed cocktail, and we share the recipe with our listeners.
Today's cocktail is the Negroni. Will we love it? Will we hate it? We're going to find out together. Today's also a very special episode because we are toasting the beloved fur baby of our guest, Miss Sophie. So if you are ready, let's raise a glass. Let's take a sip. Well, that's delicious.
Ooh.
And let's get into it.
To Sophie.
To Sophie.
Jokotifa. Alaye.
Just say it with your chest. Jokotifa. Alaye.
That's
it's
right.
so hard with my little voice. Okay, let me try it again.
Say it with your chest.
Jokotifa. Alaye.
Jokotifa Alaye
Beautiful.
is a lifelong student of death and dying. With over 25 years of experience as a death care professional, she felt called to do more than participate in the traditional funeral home model and has created Mourning space to fill the gaps in education and support that society requires for healthy grieving. It is Jokotifa's goal to build a community of empowered grievers that intend to save the world by living well and dying better. And she is passionate about sharing information that might encourage all of us to approach the end of life and beyond with less fear and more wonder. She is a licensed funeral professional in the state of California and ANITA certified end-of-life doula with a focus on grief. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
For inviting me. Needed today.
Yeah.
So, and please, tell me to shut the fuck up if we cross some lines here, but I know you lost your fur baby today. And so really we want to thank you for still joining us because we could have done this another day. We absolutely could have canceled. We could have rescheduled. And it means a lot that you are here. And so we do want to honor the light that went out today and the light that has transitioned. And so we just really want to say thank you. And we know how hard it is to lose a fur baby. So thank you for being here.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you for holding space. And honestly, I think there's no better thing for me to be doing today because I know that you both are pet care professionals. You take care of people who take care of pets or take care of pets yourself. And, it's just, we've been talking about meeting for a little bit, right? And I just, we chose this day. It just happened to be the day. And my dog is like 16, 17. I've had her since 2008. And she wasn't a puppy when I got her. And I don't know how old she was. So just she's been dying for a minute. And we were amazed she made it through last year. We were amazed she made it through January. And so for her to have picked today, that's a thing. And part of what I do is encourage people to show up in their grief, right? And so I don't look 100%. I've been crying off and on all day, and I'm in it. And I, that's good. I want to show people what it looks like to be grieving and to be a little bit of a mess, but like own it and, be okay to have conversations, be okay to share that grief with people. It's life. And, I'm grateful to honor Sophie today with this drink.
Yeah.
Thank you for your transparency and vulnerability. That's huge. That's huge. And it's a very hard thing to do. At least for me, it's a very hard thing to do for sure. But I just want you to know how much we really do appreciate you and just thank you. I have no other words other than thank you.
I know. And we're sending you so much love.
Thank you for doing this and creating space for people to talk about these very important topics.
Mm-hmm. So we want to talk a little bit about you. And you know what? Let's just dive on in there because that's just how we roll over here.
I can drink it now. Yeah. Waiting
Yeah.
all.
Go for it. So for our listeners who may not be familiar with what you do, can you kind of go into a bit more detail as to, and we know what death doulas are. We've talked about death doulas. I will say before discovering your work, I had never heard of a mourning doula. And so for those who are listening who also have not or not familiar with the term, can you talk a little bit about what you do and how that service is helpful to families?
Yeah, so what I would say is that I have this background in death care. And so I've worked in funeral homes since I was 18 and I'm 44 now. And over the years, I've just done many different facets of that work, from embalming to funeral directing and driving the hearse and working in cemeteries and all these things. But as a part of it, I've watched the way people grieve loss or don't grieve loss, or this is the way we don't really talk about death and dying. So people are caught off guard. I mean, it's always going to catch you off guard, but people don't plan ahead, don't have an idea. They're making these big decisions in a flurry of confusion and grief and all this stuff. So I'm just watching the way we, as let's say Americans, but maybe everybody, just doesn't could use more resources in the death and dying space and more resources in grief. So I see this, and then the pandemic happens. And I see the way our entire lives have been dismantled. I see the way that we're never going to go back and live the way that we used to live. Even though we're kind of now, there's still this underlying, we're not as safe. We do not feel as safe as we used to feel. And shame on us for being first world, thinking everything's always going to be easy, right? And Amazon packages are just going to keep coming and everything's going to be fine. But, we learned that time, no, we can't take anything for granted. But there was so much, lives that were lost, jobs that were lost, social lives that were lost. There were so many things that were lost. And that affected affected us, it affected our kids. It's just affected the way we live. And so I already knew the way that we handled death of people that we loved. We already needed some room for improvement. And then we have all this other grief now tacked onto that. And I was like, I can't go on anymore every day, not helping people get a language around grief, not supporting people while they're grieving, not creating a space for people to share their grief about death of a person, death of a pet, death of a relationship, any death. So while I come from this death care background of people, this mourning doula idea came out of my desperate need to acknowledge the grief that we are all in, to literally save the world for ourselves and our kids and future generations. And that goes back to leaning into grief, talking about it, creating this language, creating space for it to feel safe to be grieving, right? And so so when pandemic happened and I'm seeing this happen, I said, what else can I do? So I ended up taking a grief support specialist class and a end-of-life doula certification class, both at different universities that offer these certificate programs. And then I created Mourning Space as a way for me to educate and build a community of people who want to support and be supported by others in the community. And so now it is a place where I share information. Sometimes I do one-on-one coaching with people who contact me. In the future, I would love for there to be a physical space, like an actual mourning space, place you can go, and an online community. And so those are things that I build in my free time of being having a career outside of that, being a parent, is all the other responsibilities. So it's slow going, but I am reminded also that it's a community project and, trying to get people who want to build that with me.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And it's interesting how I think that's how most really necessary spaces and communities are kind of, I think, birthed. Because it comes from necessity. It comes from a lack, a need, not being filled. And I think it's very similar to why I started, blogging back in the day. Is just kind of like, I lost my fiance in 2017, 3 weeks before our wedding. And then I went back to work, and I'm a funeral director. I went back to work. I took 60 days off, wasn't enough, but not only did I go back to work and I wasn't prepared to go back to work, I also wasn't prepared to be a Black woman in a very white space, grieving differently and not receiving any grace for it. And it was just a lot. And so I tried to create that space for others. And I see that that's exactly what you're doing with Mourning Space, is creating space for others that you couldn't find for yourself. And I think that's admirable. I think it's beautiful. I think it's necessary. And I love that more and more death leaders are starting to, death leader sounds crazy, like something out of Harry Potter, but like we all tap a tattoo or something. No, but
I'll get one. You want to get one?
I like that. I'm down.
Right. But we all, I love that we see more and more of us, especially women of color in this space, kind of, leading the charge and really trying to build spaces for others that don't currently exist, or that don't exist outside of traditional, do you want burial or cremation? And that's it. Mm-hmm. So I think that's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And I was just at a conference the other day, and we were just talking about how we make space for the grief too, without being, a part of the issue I'm running into is I want to do so much around grief, but don't, I'm not a grief counselor, right? And I don't want to purport myself to be a grief counselor, a therapist, or any of that, but I do know grief, I know it from experience. I know it from watching it every day for 25, 26 years, every day. And these people have taught me, what they need or what to say or what not to say. And taught me what grace looks like to make a mistake and then own up to the mistake. Right. And, the realities of what grief does to people and relationships. And just kind of knowing that those possibilities are out there and being aware of what grief can possibly do. And then, when you're, then in my situation where you're then thrust into grief, then you are like, oh, I forgot like how that might impact me. I forgot that I'm just going to be a mess and I'm going to like make weird noises. And like, I did a lot. I said that today. Like I was, I'm really arm flappy. Like, like my reaction to grief. But people were like, just someone be around. I just start crying and someone like, oh, and I'm like, it's fine. And they're like, I'm fine. I know.
Yeah.
My grandma used to call those penguin tears. It's like, no, like you're flapping your little flippers.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. Tell your grandma.
Yeah. And I love that you also touched a little bit on how grief isn't just solely about loss or like someone dying. Like there are so many other aspects of life that grief comes through. And I think that it's a common misconception that grief is only going to be when someone actually dies or when something, but you can grieve a relationship, like you were saying, jobs. We saw so many people losing their jobs, when COVID first happened. And so I think it's important also to like talk about how grief can become all encompassing, and it doesn't have to necessarily mean that someone died. And I love that you're bringing that to light. And there's such a lack in like certain tools and things to provide for people. They don't know where to look. And so Shannon and I are like really big, like fans of workbooks and like journals, and she loves coloring. I'm trying to get on my coloring game a little. I could be a little better, but, we're just really big fans of that. And so I kind of wanted to touch on, because you yourself have created this amazing thing called Fire Under the Night Sky, which is a workbook. So I wanted to see if you could talk a little bit about that and how that could be beneficial to someone, and not even just someone who's grieving a loss per se, but someone who's just themselves feeling a little bit lost in life, because that happens.
Yeah. Yes. So people often, when they know I wrote a workbook, they often think that it has to do with the death of a person and how to process that. But it is not. It's actually about processing or acknowledge a piece of yourself that you're ready to let go of. Mm-hmm. Right. And so in my situation, it was about food. And so so the workbook came to being because it was my final project for my grief support specialist course. So you have to there's the final project, right? And so I just ended up coming up with that in that process, and that's what I turned in, or a sketch of what that would look like was the final project that I turned in. And it resulted from me talking to my therapist, and I love therapy, about my sort of lifelong eating battles, like just up and down with food, up and down with weight. And just saying it sucks, but if it's ever gonna be balanced for me, I'm gonna have to give up, the way I eat. And he was like, yeah, there's grief in that. And we don't really talk about it. I was like, oh my God, you're right. And I don't know that we do talk about the grief that comes from losing a behavior or shedding a behavior that's not working for us. And I was like, I'm going to write a funeral. I know how to write a funeral. So let me write a funeral for that part of me. And so I basically backed into what it takes to write a funeral. Who are you there? What are you there to say goodbye to? Why are you there to say goodbye to it? And then in this case, it was, identify the thing, identify where it started for you. So where do you first remember this behavior coming up? What are good feelings you got from this behavior? Because we don't do things generally that we don't get good feelings from, even if they're, not good. We get we get a little buzz off cigarettes. We know it's not good for us, but we get a good feeling. We get the ritual, that's what we get. So acknowledge those good feelings that you're getting from this not great thing. Figure out your why. Why is it so important that you're willing to give up all of these behaviors, all of these feelings that you're getting from engaging in this behavior. And then where are other ways that you can also get a good feeling? So if it's a ritual, where are other little rituals you can do during your day that make you feel like you're completing this kind of little cycle? And then as you're doing the workbook, you fill in the answers, and then I write a whole funeral for you, and you can use it or not use it. And you use the information that you come up with earlier and just plug it in. And then you can just read, the funeral out loud and maybe do a little ceremony as a part of it. I suggest for me, a core memory that I have with food is with grilled cheese sandwiches when I was a kid. And so when I did the service for myself, I, said the service and I burned a grilled cheese sandwich as kind of the final thing. And then I walk you through writing a thank you note to yourself, because that's what happens at the end of a funeral, right? People come and support you, and so you write a thank you note to them for supporting you in that time. And so you should write a note to yourself, thanking you for everything that you've done. And now once you've done the workbook, the nice thing about it is you always have it, right? Because unlike when someone dies and you can't. I know, I believe, ancestors, and I believe that they're more able to help us now than they were on Earth sometimes. But, their physical form's not there, right? And so there's a loss there, and you don't get that back, that body, that person. But in this, you can get it back, right? You can sneak in it. So it does mean, you have to then stay committed, right? And so I make you a little card at the back where you write down your whys, right? Because you do have to just keep going back to your whys. Why do I not want to engage in that behavior anymore? Why do I not want to do whatever? And sometimes I feel some kind of way that I'm always now I have, because I did this funeral, that behavior's not 100% gone, but I tell you what, sometimes I open that fridge and I'm like, man, I'm really sad that I can't just go ham right now. And then I shut the fridge and I make tea, and if I do that more times than I did before, that's a win for me. And if I can always go back to my why, that's a win for me.
No, I love that.
I'm just so excited. Sitting,
I could tell. I'm just looking at her face, and she's just in awe. She doesn't even know. When Shannon is silent, that means she's so excited and deep in thought that she can't contain herself. She can't express it. So I'm uh-oh.
Gotta shut up usually.
No.
And I am in awe of you. I think that is just absolutely wonderful. I love it. I love it so much. I love the ritual. Even while you were talking, it had me thinking about rituals that I've had, or rituals that, family members of mine had that mirrored that, when experiencing a loss and not knowing how to process it and subconsciously processing it in these unhealthy ways. And we actually had on, a few episodes ago, we had on Dr. Courtney Crisp, who is she's an eating disorder therapist. That's one of her specialties. And that's one of the things we talked about is finding, healthier ways to navigate your grief, and how, you think about when someone dies, the first thing they bring over is food, because that's all we do, especially in communities of color. Just all we know is just bring them food. And if you struggle with food, or if you're not really sure, it could be the inverse. Either you're emotionally eating, or you don't have an appetite and you're not eating for days on end. And, how do you navigate that when that's the one way that people do know how to support you? So that it brought me back to that. I love the idea of using the ritual because you're absolutely right. We know how to write funerals. We did it all the time. Good for you. We know exactly how to do that. And that's exactly what it is. You are kind of creating this ritual and saying goodbye to this behavior. And in a way, there's a finality in that. And it was just absolutely, I am stunned. I have no words. I'm in awe.
Well, I want to feel like they can do that, like when a marriage is over, have a little funeral for, Mrs. Whoever, when you become a mom, like, have a little ritual for, not mom, whatever you're doing.
Not mom life. Yeah.
And that's another thing that I've been talking to other people about. That's a really common transition that creates a lot of grief and a lot of loneliness sometimes, and a lot of unable to understand, unable to do anything with that grief because they're so busy feeling guilty about it because they have a baby,
Mm-hmm.
So it's just any space that we can give people to say, no, absolutely. You should, if you're feeling grief, there's a reason, and you shouldn't shove down anything. Shoving down anything, it's just going to come back up uglier and meaner and bigger, And so anything you can, if you are feeling it, acknowledge it. Things are asking to be acknowledged. And actually, that's one of my favorite things that I've done recently too, is a grief meditation, and it's linked in my on my bio on Instagram, and it's a guided grief meditation, and a part of it is acknowledging where grief lives inside of you, and engaging with it, not being afraid to say no, I know you're there, let's get to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know what I'm doing tonight.
Right?
Cool. Let me know what you think, because I actually, that's something I would really love to continue to explore. I listen to a lot of listening to guided meditations was a practice I did for a long time, and now I'm doing another type of meditation daily, but I do always love going back to my guided meditations, especially for sleep. And I'm part of the Peloton community, let's say. I'm pretty active in knowing what's going on in that group, and they got a lot of guided meditations, and they're really helpful, right? So let me know if I can be the next guided meditation lady.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. And we have a lot of events too. We are trying to have more events that are focused around wellness and healing, and like you said, getting to know your grief. We had one just at the end of the year, and it was called Get That Shit Out, and it was a grief read where we read letters to our grief and cussed it out.
Burst them out.
Cussed it the fuck out. We went pretty ham, but then we brought it all together by, Dr. Whitney Griffin is a really good friend of ours, and she led us in a guided meditation at the end. So it's you get it all out, because I think we tend to get caught up on when we're, talking about leading folks on their grief journey about, journaling your feelings and getting it out. And that's great. I think a lot of people tend to skip over the rage part. And because like you said, just when you grieve, even grieving, losing who you were before you became a mother, or, when you're no longer part of a marriage or anything like that, it's okay to have rage there. It's okay to be upset that you don't have access to this part of yourself anymore. And that rage needs a place to go in a healthy, non-destructive way.
Yeah, healthy way.
So, in a very healthy way. And, so we're very big fans of guided meditations and trying to find ways to, while honoring that rage, bringing it full circle. We don't want to rile people up and then just send them out into the world.
Probably would not be safe.
Yeah. So I totally hear what you're saying. And it's a thing to say, like, no, get mad, right? But also say, like, get mad safely and don't, make other people miserable with it. But no, it's like, if it's there, it wants to be felt, And if you don't, it will just come back. Like, you will feel it now or you will feel it later.
Oh, yeah. It's going to come out. Now, whether you experience it in the wave that's hitting you now or you let it explode in like the frozen aisle at Trader Joe's, it's up to you.
Yeah.
It's like, choose.
Choose
which way you want to do this, because it's coming out either way.
Yeah.
But, that's a way, I guess, to kind of step into really embodying your grief or really getting to know it and to be, like you say, the empowered griever. And which brings me, it's a perfect segue to my next question.
Yeah.
What does an empowered griever look like to you? What are the first steps that you think someone should take when they are hit with a huge loss?
So for me, empowered griever doesn't mean handles everything in stride. It doesn't really get affected. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean like grief's nothing. Empowered griever to me means you are aware that grief can take many forms. You are aware that you may be experiencing one kind of grief and someone else may be experiencing another kind of grief, and both are valid. That you are aware that people sometimes act poorly due to grief, and maybe you extend them grace, but also you ask for grace when you know that maybe you are going to have the possibility of not acting your best self when grieving. But it also has to do with knowledge, right? So it has to do with approaching these ends, and particularly when it comes to the end of a life, not being blindsided by all the decisions you have to make and all the money you might have to spend and all of the choices. So an empowered griever, particularly at the end of life, is someone who is prepared as they can be to make decisions, and either they've made them for themselves or they have talked to others about what decisions they want, so they can act upon those and work together with minimize conflict. And then is someone who then has a language, has an understanding, and so when they see other people grieving, can be there to support them too. And so it's just all the ways that we can juice ourselves up. So when then these things happen that knock us down, when we're down, we understand, like, this is a part of it. Being knocked down is a part of it. Getting back up is hopefully a part of it. All of this ups and downs are a part of it. And that's being a surfer, being a surfer of these waves instead of being surprised you're at the beach, There you go.
I think we talk about waves so often when it comes to like just the emotion that you feel, all the different emotions that hit you. I don't think ever once we've heard it referred to as be a surfer. But it's such a simple analogy. Be a surfer instead of being surprised that you're at the beach. And that is just, it's so simple, but incredibly profound. And I'm so, with your permission, I'm going to borrow that.
You can borrow it, and then remember that surfers get knocked down all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Occasionally they get that good wave, and then and a lot of it is like getting up, getting knocked down, getting back up, getting knocked down, getting back up. Mm-hmm. Learning a little bit how to ride it so you get it a little better, get in the groove, but also like get knocked down, and especially these big forces, right? Water, Pisces season. Oh, by the way, that's the gin I chose today. By the way, it's like Neptune. It was like a special like Neptune gin. I was like, for Pisces season, that is what we must be using today. But like this big water force is just like, these big emotional forces. Like, you don't control them. And if you think you do, sorry, right? All we can do is try to make friends with them. All we can do is try to get a balance going where we know that they also have the right. We're just along for the ride.
I am living for this analogy.
Yeah.
Because
I can extend an analogy like nobody's business. I'll tell you that.
I'm living for it because really, when you think about it, it's every time you think about a surfer who gets knocked down, everyone starts somewhere. And every time you get knocked down, you're like, I'm never doing this again. Or you get back up and you try it again and it's harder. But each time you learn a little bit. Each time you learn your triggers. You learn what's going to put you to that place. You learn how to navigate. You learn how to give yourself and hold space for yourself. And that really is what a grief journey is like. Because it just seems like this overwhelming pressure, but the longer you're on your journey, the more time that passes, you're kind of learning how to navigate these waters. And you do, and eventually you may not get, I mean, you're still, even the best surfer gets hit by a wave. Even the absolute best surfer will get knocked down. So you'll get knocked down on an anniversary or a birthday or a holiday or, things like that. You absolutely will still get knocked down, but you're be able to get right back up. And that's just, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, and I tell that too. People like, don't be, keep track of dates, right? If you start feeling weird, right before August and you had a loss in August, like, just know that's going to happen. So you're gentle to yourself in those times, right? If you know something's coming, like, figure out your strategy to manage it. Figure out what you can do for yourself. And it may not be perfect, but better than you going all out, burnout and whatever else you're doing and forgetting that you're going to need to be extra gentle to yourself.
Yeah. And I also love this analogy because if you think about the ocean, right? The ocean is the ocean whenever, all the time, whether we want it to be a certain way or not. And it's the same kind of thing with life and grief. And the ocean ebbs and flows. And even when we think we know it and we're like, all right, I got this, I'm doing the best, and you just get knocked off. And it's nothing necessarily that you did wrong. It's just the ocean that day was just different. The currents were different. The waves were different. And I think that's sometimes an analogy for not even just grief, but life itself. We could be doing amazing, and all it takes is this one little thing or this one little thing to remind you of something. And all of a sudden it becomes all encompassing again. But you just got to keep paddling and you just got to keep doing it and going back and forth and back and forth. And I think that within itself is really beautiful, and embracing that journey and just kind of relinquishing that control, because none of us have control. We think we have control. Yeah. None of us have control over anything. And so when you learn that and when you just take it by stride and you just get back on that board, then coast. I think life just becomes a little bit more peaceful that way. So I love that you use that analogy, because I'm like Shannon, I'm going to use this too. Yeah.
Yeah. Finding peace is really important to me, and not, I'd love to be happy, I'd love to feel joy. But those are not sustainable. Whereas this, like, a level of peace is, to me is the metric that I want to pay attention to. And if I'm quite honest, like, even before my dog, like, it's been a real rough January and February.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. I've been underwater a little bit, but it's a season. And I'll get back at it.
Yeah. Just got to keep paddling.
I am, and I'm my head's above water right now, which is nice. But yeah, it's, sun's coming out.
Yeah, spring is coming. Season of growth and healing and everything anew. So,
and not a moment too soon.
Yeah.
I like winter. Winter.
I love winter too, but winter coincided with a lot of like stuff, and so all of it together was.
It just wasn't your season, but that's okay. Spring's coming. Yeah. Well, I want to talk about one of my favorite things to talk about, which are books.
Yay!
I love reading. I'm a huge book nerd. Jen will tell you this. I'm usually reading something, but I was reading one of your blog posts. I think it was called Grief Reads. And you talk about this book in particular that I'd actually never heard of. So I'm really excited to go get it. And now I really want to read it. But it's called The Year of Magical Thinking. And when I was reading your blog, I was just like, oh my God, this sounds like something that I totally need to read, because it resonated so much with you. And as someone else who has experience in like the funeral industry and death care for over a decade now, I just really want to know what parts of the book really resonated with you. And if you have any books that you like to recommend for people, not even just necessarily about death and dying and grief, but just about people who are having a hard time in general and just, are struggling.
Yeah, I love The Year of Magical Thinking, because she's so honest about the blur that happens in that you know, for her, it's just like this first year is just like, what does it mean to lose someone and have them be gone and you're just not yourself anymore? And she's going through a lot of other stuff. She has like a daughter who's sick also. But she's very real and honest about what it looks like to be a widow in that first year. And one of my, like, just real easy thing, but I love it. And I say this often, she was saying, like, back to the food thing, like when it first happened, she couldn't eat anything. And she had a neighbor that would just drop off soup every day. And it was just a broth, right? A congee or whatever. And it meant more to her than anything else, was just for someone to recognize and not be intrusive, right? And just give this like simple, nourishing, you know, uncomplicated gift. And so I'll literally bring people soup from that, or you know, I do give food, like, but like DoorDash is really easy now with people like being separate, and so I'll send people DoorDash money so they can, you know, buy their own stuff if they're going through it. So I loved that. I had to laugh though about one part where she's saying when someone had warned her that the funeral homes sometimes leave roses at the place where the person dies. And as a person who has absolutely left roses, as a person who would go to the home or a hospital or usually a home, when someone has died, will go there, retrieve the person, and then try to make up the bed and put a flower on the bed as a way of kind of softening it or showing that we care or whatever. And she hated it. And like someone else had that experience in her life and had warned her against roses. And she said it like with such disdain. And I was like, oh man, like, that's a good thing to know. Like maybe I should ask, like, sometimes we live a rose. Was that helpful? Like, you know, or have that conversation with hospice, you know, maybe ahead of time, right? Before you're coming, hospice nurses at the house just say, hey, this is something I normally do. Do you think they're okay with that? Or do you want to ask, like, or let me know if you're like, know that they'd be offended. So I won't do it.
Yeah.
I just thought that was funny. But just it's such a accurate, because she lived it, you know, portrayal of what it can look like, when you lose someone that big of a force in your life. You know? So that's one I love. My new, probably favorite book on grief is Faith, Hope, and Carnage from Nick Cave. And I don't know if you guys know who Nick Cave is, but the singer, and I actually have loved this guy as a singer since I was since the 90s, like as a little punk goth kid, going to the goth clubs. Like he's kind of a staple in that whatever community. So I've been listening to him forever. But a while ago, he started to shift over the years. He used to be this kind of like raw, kind of darker guy. But over the years, he's really softened and he's really like kind of gone and doing another direction with his music. But a turning point for him was when his son died. He fell off a cliff after a bad trip. And how Nick Cave as a person has changed since that loss has been fascinating and beautiful and tragic to witness. And for a while, I couldn't even listen to his music anymore because I was so sad for him that it was like just listening to his music made me too sad for him that I couldn't listen anymore. But the way that he has evolved as a human and the way that he now shares his kindness and his wisdom with the world, particularly through this thing called the Red Hand Files. It's just like he's an angel. He is an angel on earth that I believe was brought here to talk about grief and to shed light on it. And it's so beautiful. And I feel honored. Part of my religion is this prenatal choice that you choose what you're going to do before you come into the world. And so I want him to feel my gratitude for choosing to be the sort of person that would have this kind of loss so that he could change the world in the way that he's doing right now. So he has this book called Faith, Hope, and Carnage, which a lot of it deals with the loss of his son and how his life has changed as a grieving parent.
I just pulled it up. Alexis,
I'm adding that to my list.
quietly like pulling it up on the side while she was talking before I forgot the
Send
name.
me the link.
Yes. I'm going to send you the
Yeah, I'm going to literally add that to my cart.
Mm-hmm.
And go to the Red Hand Files and just so he's this guy that like, you know, people love, right? People love access to singers and things, but he has to ask him anything. And you can ask him anything, and he doesn't, you know, obviously respond to every question, but he responds to the real, like he'll respond to real raw questions. And for a minute he was doing these in-person ask questions. So instead of like a concert, he had a piano and he would play piano, but he also would answer questions. So people in the audience, they would have microphones, and he had some ground rules that he would give in the beginning of just like overall being kind to one another. And people would get the mic and ask him a question. He would, and people know his life. People know about his child. He wants people to engage with him about it. And I've seen this guy in concert a bazillion times. But that show, and it was at Davies Symphony Hall in San Francisco, the one that I went to, it was the most moving thing I've ever seen in my life.
That sounds amazing. I think it's special when people who are well known within a community to use their voice to amplify, like, hey, I went through this horrible thing, but ask me about it. Let's talk about it, because talking about it and like letting it be known what you're going through is sometimes more impactful than people realize. So I think that's great that he does that. Now I need to read that book.
When I say things like, you know, save the world, like I mean it, and I see him trying to do the same. And so I'm not trying to steal Nick Cave's idea, but I really think all of us who are willing to engage in those conversations and be willing to share what grief looks like and allow people to talk about theirs in a way that feels safe, that will just give us a level of humanity, caring about humanity that we don't currently have.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about how you want him to feel your gratitude for choosing to be the person that experienced this loss, to share this with the world. And I've never heard it put that way. I think that's absolutely beautiful. And you're absolutely right, because that is not only is enduring a loss very hard and weighs on us emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, all of that, but reliving it and sharing and being so open, essentially it's kind of like you're opening that wound over and over and over for sometimes at your own detriment to help others. And so that couldn't have been easy. I know I'll have days I try to be open about my experience, and then I'll have days where I'm just like, girl, no, I'm like, not today, just not today. So that being said, with the work that we do, it can be very emotionally draining. It can weigh heavily on us. And so what we would like to know is what you do to decompress.
So a lot of my stories, especially when it's nice weather, you'll see me like skateboarding. Not that I'm good. I don't like say nothing about that, but it like just I like wheels. So I like roller skates. I like skateboarding, just like pushing around. We have a really great trail system where I live, and so riding my bike around the trail system. Reading, I love, although I'm finding myself doing a lot more Audible books now because I drive so much for my work. So I spend a lot of time listening to audio books. I would say now my faith is a real source of comfort for me, which is really interesting because that's very new. I was, I want to say like, I was raised Catholic, and then I was agnostic for a long time. Then I was like this, crystal spiritual lady that we are, and then that brought me to the African traditional religion that I'm a part of now. And so I'm quite surprised to say that's where I am, but here I am, and it's definitely it's a source of community and a source of comfort for me. I got good friends, and I really love. I'm like one of those like people who love retreats, and so there are some people that I enjoy going to their like retreats in Mount Shasta, maybe, or meditation retreats, things like that.
Yeah,
away from the real world.
Yeah, an escape. I love
Yeah.
that.
She's speaking your language right now.
I know. I'm like, this is like, yeah. I've been dying to go to a retreat. Oh, no pun intended. I hate that. I've really been wanting to go to a retreat, but I haven't. My schedule's been chaotic. But yeah, we sound like we would vibe, because that totally sounds like my jam. I'm always looking to.
I wasn't a retreat person, and then someone invited me on one, and it was just like, I think it was a little bit of yoga, a little bit of hiking, just a couple of sisters that decided to do retreats. And it was really, I was like, oh, look at this life that people can live. Like, how nice is this? And since then, I found a couple other, I go to theirs pretty regularly once a year. And then a couple others that I don't travel outside the country much, though, which is really interesting. I know a lot of people are like trying to go to, I don't know,
like Costa Rica or like Bali, to do like the more extensive ones. Yeah, I don't know if I could do like a full silent retreat. Like I may be able to, but some of those are a little intense. They scare me. Like I meditate pretty regularly, but a full silent retreat for like a week, I don't know.
My friend did, and there's one. There's a place that they do that in near where I have. Where my parents live in Clear Lake, California. There's a place in Kelseyville that does these silent retreats, I think. And my friend did it, and I was really interested. So I might. So I don't have I have a lot of competing priorities, and that is not on the list. But someday when I have a lot more free time, I would totally. I like extreme things, though. So I'm definitely one that tends to go big.
You go first. You can tell me.
Will do. No problem.
You can tell me.
You like a trickle down effect. We'll do like different levels.
Yeah. Do it. Start with a day.
Yeah. But one of our favorite questions to ask our guests, and it's going to be hard, so take however long you need to figure it out. So we like to say, yep.
And save a little, because you're going to need one for the question after that.
The next question after two. Okay. All right. So using just one word, what do you hope that people take away from your work and the content that you create?
I mean, I'm going to have to go with empowerment, right? Because that's at the root of everything that I do, is to make you more equipped, make, you in general, more equipped to understand what's happening around you in the world with yourself, not just get you armed up. Like, I want you armed up. It's going to be a battle. Like, I'm not telling you you're going to win the battle, maybe, but I want you, with your best.
I love it.
All the tools. So.
Yep. Empowerment.
I love that. So much. All right. You ready?
Oh, God, there's another one?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is my favorite. So we each have our favorite question that we like to ask, that in this season we're asking every guest. So she got to ask her favorite question. I get to ask my favorite question.
Ready.
How do you want to be remembered?
I get more than one word.
Yes, you get more than one word. As many words as you want.
I think all of us want to be remembered as someone who made a difference. I guess that's not true. Some Aquarius friends I know, or human design was those human design, you're there for yourself. But yeah, I do hope that I made a difference. I hope I made the world better for somebody. I hope that I brought some either measure of peace for someone that they didn't have before. God, I have a lot of hopes. I want to be remembered as a storyteller. I want to be remembered as someone who delivered the best funeral that you've ever been to in your life.
Goals.
Be remembered as a good parent. That's important to me. I want to be an ancestor on someone's altar.
Same. Mm-hmm.
I want a lot of stuff, I guess.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing.
But it all comes to making a difference, right? Making a difference for my community, making a difference for my family. A positive one.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to segue and we are going to play a little game.
Oh
If
my.
you're up for it.
Sure. Yeah. Again, ready.
If you are up for it. So we over here at Stiff are very big fans of the Death Deck. If you have not heard of the, she's going to get hers.
Yay!
Yes.
All right,
Yay.
am I asking questions too?
You can.
What? Yeah, absolutely. Totally can.
Yeah, I was actually
Wow.
able to. I got to connect with them a little bit, and yeah, that great tool. Love it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every death care professional should have one, and
Yeah.
I got the end of life deck too. By the way,
I haven't got the end of life deck yet, but I really, really want to get it. And I know they're working on, I believe, an expansion pack too. So I'm really excited about that. But this is, yes, I agree. And not an ad. They don't sponsor us, but maybe eventually. I don't know. But it is a tool that every death care professional or end of life care professional should have, or just anyone in general who wants to find a way to start these conversations with their family and doesn't know how. So, we're going to ask you a little question. And then I like this, and you can ask us a question. I like this. This is fun.
they're gonna love this.
All right. Okay. This one is called Lucky You. You get to relive one day in your life before you die. Which one?
Man, my first thought is I would love to relive watching a football game with my grandmother. But then you're like, not to sound corny, but like having a baby was amazing, and I would love to have that experience again. I only have one. Man, so I told you I like to do extreme things, and having a baby is like the most extreme thing to do. And I loved it for that, and and you love it for the baby gets put on your chest afterwards. It was talk about empowering, right? And my life has been empowered by that moment. That moment taught me so many things about myself, and it was a part of the shift around like weight loss, and like got me into bodybuilding and running a marathon after that. Like, so just that moment was a pivotal moment for me. And so I'm gonna relive January 25th, 2011.
Wow.
Beautiful.
That's beautiful. That is so sweet.
Yeah.
Now I want to text my mama and be like, are you going to relive the day you get?
No.
I'm one of those, like, don't give me the epidural. Like, I want to feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was like that too. She's still alive. She's like that. She is like that too.
God.
She's tell you, I loved being pregnant both times. I just loved being pregnant.
Yeah. And I don't, no disrespect to anyone who didn't have that experience, right? So I'm not,
Yeah.
got their own experience. Everybody wants their own birth experience, like whatever you want. But for me, that's what I wanted. And I for the most part, got what I wanted.
Yeah.
I love that. All right. You know what? I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to let you hit us with the question.
All right.
Why not?
Ready.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I mean, what do you believe happens after you die? They have questions, but you don't need the bullet points. I'll give you the bullet points for the listeners, but you could just riff if you want. So it's either heaven or hell, depending. Your soul spends a little time in bliss, then you reincarnate, or total blackout. That's all, folks.
Shannon.
Shannon.
I knew you were going to do that. Alexis, I think every time I'm asked this question, my answer is different. I don't think it's total blackout. That's it. That's all there is. And there's nothing. So I was raised Seventh-day Adventist, and they believe that like when you die, you're asleep and then there's a second coming and everyone's raised. And I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to that either. I don't think this is all there is. And I don't think we were put on this earth just to keep coming back to it. I don't know. Honestly, my answer is I don't know, but I am very much enjoying the journey, and I'm very much coming to be okay with not knowing, because I think what exists after this is a plane completely different than ours that our tiny little human brains can't comprehend. And I think it's almost obnoxious to try. So for me, the journey is becoming okay with just not knowing.
What a safe response.
But that's how I feel.
So safe.
That's
how
how I feel.
non-controversial. Oh man. For me,
I feel.
what do I think? I was raised by a hippie. My mom is a straight up spiritual, crystal wearing, incense burning. I've been meditating since I was in utero. I don't believe that it's nothing. I don't believe in total blackout. And I also don't believe in the heaven or hell thing. My mom's always instilled in me that we kind of create our own here on earth. Like you can either be in heaven and like life, such as ups and downs, you can be in moments of heaven and moments of hell. I think one of the things that my mom has always mentioned to me that I think probably resonates with me the most is depending on, and like kind of how you were mentioning in your religion, how you kind of signed like this, not a contract, but you have these agreements when you come onto this planet and onto Earth. And until you fulfill that, my mom thinks that you reincarnate. So like, let's say in this lifetime, I'm supposed to be a shepherd of healing and I don't accomplish that in this lifetime, then I would reincarnate into another lifetime and have the same thing until I, accomplish that. So if I had to guess, closest maybe to something like that, like I don't believe that I would like reincarnate as like a raccoon my next life. Like I think that we have, or like in my case it'd be like a bat or something spooky, I'm sure. But yeah, I believe in reincarnation, but I believe that it's finite. I don't believe that we just keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back. I do believe that we do have a purpose, and until we serve that purpose, we will continue to be here until it's fulfilled. So I think that's probably the closest thing. So it's not really any of those options, but kind of like one of them ish, maybe.
Yeah, I think when I play the death deck or when I talk to it, they're there if people like, that's easy. But if, I think it also inspires conversation over what it could be.
Yeah. That was so beautiful. I love that. I don't think I knew that about you.
The death deck changed lives.
I didn't know. I mean, and I know that Alexis is definitely very much where the spooky meets spiritual, and all things meditation. Everything's a sign. Shout out to Gia. I feel like we shout Gia out at least once every other episode.
My mom is just so like, I can't wait until we have her on, because she's just, I think I'm the embodiment of her sometimes. So it's like her speaking through me, and I catch myself because growing up, I was like, I'm nothing like you. And now I'm like, ooh,
no,
it's like you.
Facts.
So, yeah.
Shout out to Gia, a true gem. Okay, I think we can do more. Well, now see, Alexis, you don't get to answer this question because you just did.
Oh.
This one's called Oh Wise One. Talk about a person in your life. You don't have to share their name. Talk about a person in your life who you would consider wise, and share a piece of wisdom that you gained from them.
That's the hardest question you've asked me all day. And
I
know so many wise people, but I'm like struggling to say like a quip that they might have, or a thing that they might say. But I think more than what they say is how they navigate the world, which is with like a confidence. And, and I'm always impressed by people who are smart and they don't care what people like think about them, right? And because I care very deeply, and I'm trying to recover from that, what people think about me. But man, gonna have to cut out all this thinking time.
No, we love it. We love it. And that's the whole point too. We want you to be able to, take your time. We ain't got nowhere to be.
I'm gonna tell you the wisest thing anyone ever said to me. I'm gonna tell you a thing I live by, and which I use at work all the time, which is think horses, not zebras. That gets you out of so many jams. Often we create zebras where it's just a horse. And to remove emotion, right, and look at facts. I don't know if that's wise or not, but it's certainly practical, and it certainly gets you out of trouble and decreases emotional situations. Like, people get all emotional over nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. I don't know if that's wise, but it's life advice that will save you plenty of high anxiety. I think horses, not zebras.
Listen. You're speaking to my highly emotional Cancer heart.
Cancer self. God help her.
Gosh, yes.
Oh, that's my brother.
But the thing is, not only am I a Cancer, I'm from South Central. So like my feelings can be hurt very easily at your own risk.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
True.
I've calmed down significantly at my big old age, but I know Alexis can tell you some stories. But,
oh God.
And she and I are sister signs. Alexis is a Capricorn, so we definitely ebb and flow very well together.
Yeah, I got that grounding
and
energy.
Virgo married to an Aries. That's a combo. That is not supposed to work. My friend gifted me a book, and it has the signs as compatibility, and I got a 2 out of 10.
It's
yeah, but we've been married for 22 years, so we're fine.
So obviously it works.
Virgos can make just about anything work, though. My best friend's a Virgo, and she is the just kindest, most chill, laid back soul. Very, very much very particular. There is the way you're doing things, and there's the right way, which is the way she's doing that. Yeah. But I feel like Virgos in general just tend to flow, not necessarily go with the flow. They tend to set the flow and just sort of gravitate, everyone else gravitates towards them. I love Virgos. Virgos make me happy. My partner's also an Aries, and they are a lot, but I love them dearly. Love them dearly.
Well, I appreciate the fire that I.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate that he's able to say what's on his mind, and I'm much more political than that, which is no fun. And so I say often that I'll be the 80-year-old that's rah, 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 getting all that stuff. I told you that I'm squishing down. I said don't squish things down. Well, I'm squishing plenty down, and it will come when I'm 80, and I'm sorry.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We are just, I know I'm over the moon. I'm sure I speak for Alexis too. We just are very excited that you were able to join us, and this has been so much fun. Would you like to tell the people where they can find you?
Yeah, the people can find me when I'm not hiding in my cave. And by the way, if I'm hiding in my cave, you're free to prod me to get me out. But Mourning Space, MOURNING SPAC at Instagram right now, and online mourningspace.com. Eventually other places. So if you want, I'm just so, when I have these conversations, I'm so motivated, and I know that there is a community of people who are ready to make this. So I'm just, always grateful, whether it's to do something or not do something, but just to create this network of people who are all out for the same thing, out to make the same difference. When we work together, it can, make an exponential difference. Right. So, anyone who's interested in doing this work, anyone who's interested in having these conversations, I want to have them with you.
Thank you so much. Your voice just feels like a hug. It
is very soothing.
And I will say, you're not the first one to say, and that's why I want to do, I think, the guided meditations. And look, I'm going to say I officiate the best funerals you've ever been to. And a part of it is because of the way I deliver it. It's just true.
Yeah, your voice is like the complete opposite of mine. I'm very jealous. My voice is not soothing whatsoever. I sound like I'm 4, but it's fine. I'm very jealous of people like
young,
you.
But that's fine. You that.
Yeah, but
I
your
also feel like
meditation,
you are very young, and so just enjoy your youth.
I'm not young.
You're not young?
No,
you're not young.
I'm not young. I'm okay. I'm a lady.
You just said I'm a lady.
No, I'm not young. Oh God, how old am I now? I just turned 32 in January.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's
No. I have an old soul though. It's like I sound like I'm really young, but I'm a total grandma. But like I don't leave the house.
Myrtle is in there.
I'm a complete Myrtle. I don't leave the house. I'm sipping my tea in my jammies. I don't care.
And
I'm totally.
I don't care who is visiting. I went and stayed with Alexis for a couple of days, and
I don't.
All right, so I'll see you in a little bit. I was like, where are you going? She was take a bath. Disappeared for like an hour. It was just gone.
That's my thing. I'm reading. I'm reading in the bath.
Oh man, that's the life.
Yeah. So I'm a grandma. So.
Well, I love you guys, and you know what? I feel very kindred spirits to you two, and thank you so much for allowing me to be here and hang out.
Thank you.
I needed a laugh today.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Well, y'all, as always, you can find me on not everything, but on X and Instagram as I Do Death. You can follow me at idodeath.com and on TikTok at i.do.death.
No hater shout out that time?
Oh, listen, because I am campaigning for, there is a hater, which I don't know this person. I'm sure she's a very lovely lady, but she took I Do Death on TikTok, and I'm like, now you know. Give it back. Give it back. Just give it back. It's okay. Give it back. You can follow the show at Get Stiff Podcast on Instagram.
And you can find me on everything at Death with Lex.
As always, this has been a pleasure. And we are here with, and I'm going to say her name this time, Alexis Jokotifa Alaye. From Mourning Space. And as always, this has been another episode of Get Stiff, Stiff Talk,
Stiff Drinks.
And we out. Get Stiff is produced by Milan Reed. Do you love us and want to help others find the show? If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. For all audio platforms, please rate and review the show. It helps others find us, and we'd love to know what you think. Do you have a topic you want to hear us get into? A drink recipe you'd like to recommend? Do you have a story to share? We want to hear from you. Get in touch at getstiffpodcast@gmail.com or reach out on Instagram at getstiffpodcast.